Good morning, Adam Singer.
Morning, sir. How are you?
Good, thank you. No guest today, just me and you
It
blathering away.
keeps us on track. I think the two episodes with Forrest were fantastic, though.
Yeah, yeah, I got some good feedback.
I mean,
Um, and
it's like I'm
bumped
sorry.
up.
I think it's just like it's hard for me to see him sometimes. Well, so I coached him, and he's been one of my closest friends longer than I want to admit at this point. I watch the anniversaries of his like TUF fight or his championship, and I'm like, Jesus, that could not have been that long ago. And we've remained close, but it's when you start talking to him and you realize what he's been around, like he's at the forefront of the UFC. He has seen and is part of all of the evolution of the UFC. At first, he was part of the evolution of the UFC, going from this small, unwatched thing, the human cockfighting era, if you will, to now being treated like another billion-dollar mega sport. And he's sitting in his office surrounded by scientists. And hopefully, next time you get to Vegas, now that you guys know each other, you can get over to the PI and see all of it. It's really amazing what they do there.
My Vegas trips are over unless they stop ripping everyone off. When are we there last? It's fucking
It's been a while.
egregious.
Yeah,
Egregious the
yeah.
money charged now.
So I don't think I've been there since COVID, and I was just sort of watching passively what was changing during COVID. I don't know if you've noticed, but they've recently a lot of the casinos now have these all-inclusive packages because they are trying to undo the harm that they did.
Oh, really? Like all inclusive for food and drink?
Yeah, you get the room, the parking. There's no resort fees. It's like you pay X amount of dollars, you get food and drink and stay. So I think they're trying to undo some of the harm they've done.
Yeah, they're going to need to because it's wild.
I think part of it is, and then I don't know if you see this with your young fighters, but my young fighters are very avid gamblers.
Oh, you
And
know,
not just my young fighters. I assume that they're a snapshot of the entire generation.
well, that's not new to me because I was a degenerate gambler growing up in Scotland, as were most of my friends. We call them bookies, or you know what
Right?
bookies.
Yeah,
They were
I do.
they were on every corner. So when I came to the States, and yeah, you will have our reservations and stuff here. The idea, most people, I thought you could only gamble in Vegas when I came to the States, but you didn't find bookmakers and stuff, and then the online stuff comes on. What's that poly market they're talking about now? You bet on fucking
Yeah,
anything.
yeah. You can. I mean, anything. And now you can not only can you bet on anything, you can bet continuously during like it used to be. You had to call your bookie before the game started, and you place the bet who's going to win, who's going to lose points. Very simple. And now you can continuously bet on the game. You can arbitrage with different sites and different things. It is unbelievable what you can do now. The prop bets, I think that's where they really get people. The prop bets, the parlays, like bookies didn't really have that shit. You called your bookie on Saturday morning, you're like, I want to put 100 on this game, 100 on this game, 100 on this game, and then you let it ride. Now they're betting during the events.
And the digital currency, once I was broke back then, once I put all my money in the puggy, which is the slot machines, or picked the wrong horse, my cash was gone. I do worry about my boys, if they're because they got their cards and their digital money and everything. So I try and shoo them away from that. Like that ever
Yeah,
fucking helps.
right, exactly. And I'm constantly like, I like you had said a couple episodes ago, you have sort of a text string with your fighters. I have a text string with my athletes. And every big fight night, they're on that text string. They're like, I need, someone's like, I need this guy to win for my parlay, or I need him to throw more strikes. That was the other night. He's like, someone's like, I bet the over on the strikes. And I'm like, do you even like MMA, or you just love to gamble on it at this point? So I am constantly on them about 1-800-GAMBLER and making fun of them. And I assume at some point I'm gonna have to help somebody with something. But at least the difference is your bookies, when you didn't pay them, they beat you up, right? Or I
Right.
assume they come beat you up. I assume that these big companies don't come beat you up, but they ruin your fucking credit life forever.
Yeah, it's a slippery slope. It's a real disease.
There was an article on in The Economist a little while ago, and I shared it with all the guys. They didn't understand it, probably how I was reading it, but these companies know exactly what your lifetime worth is after just looking at your demographics and the few bets you make, and then so they maximize that lifetime effort. They either throttle you down or let you gamble more. Like if you're a sucker, they make it totally easy for you to give them their money. If you're good at it, they make it more difficult to give them your money. And so it's not like the bookie had a number for everyone. They had the betting line for everyone. these companies are adjusting it and moving it according to you.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Puppets
I
on
mean,
strings.
puppets on strings to steal your money. But the UFC has gone hard into it, obviously, right? I mean, you can't watch a UFC without seeing 4 or 5, advertisements for different gambling companies.
Speaking of UFC, I didn't watch it. I hear people raving about that heavyweight fight last weekend.
What do you mean by raving? Like, because I saw something,
Excitement.
sure, but I have also seen street fights that were just as exciting. So what I saw, okay, so not to Curtis Blades, I've always felt like had a very low fight IQ, right? Because he has a skill set that is rare in the heavyweight division, which is the ability to punch and shoot. You don't see a lot of heavyweights that can shoot a takedown. Most heavyweights they're clinch and cage based. And so now you have a heavyweight who can punch and shoot, but he fell in love with the punching part. And he would lose fights because, heavyweight striking it's like playing the lottery. You could be winning, 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 and then you're exhausted or you get tagged with something. And the other guy, have you looked into the other guy? Holik, is that his name? Holik, whatever the hell his name is.
I never heard of him. But granted, I'm a little washed out with the UFC. I'm a little bit fatigued myself. Between my own
Okay.
fighters, I'm usually we spoke about that. I
Yeah,
just don't
yeah,
get,
for sure.
I don't get worked up from them now.
So if you think about it, Blades has this skill set where he can move and throw punches and shoot takedowns, right? He's a very good wrestler. The other guy played college football, college wrestling, and made it into the NFL. And so now you're talking about a guy with the highest level of athleticism that we're going to see at heavyweight in the UFC. And but he just I don't know if he's dumb. I don't know if he has CT. I don't know if he's playing a role, but he fights very unintelligently and he wants to showboat. He kept giving Blades the finger, and it was just very annoying. Um, he's not going to be in the sport that long if he keeps fighting like that. But the athletic ability he has and the skills he has already tremendous. But now they signed the other kid at heavyweight, the wrestler, the world
Oh,
champion wrestler.
Stevens.
No, no, no. What's it? The Jesus Christ! Like, is this our podcast going to turn into this where we can't remember anyone's name or any dates or anything anymore? Um, yes, Stevens, Gabriel Stevens. You're 100% right. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm dumb. He's in the
Let's
UFC now.
let's talk about fight IQ. That gets is it another term or word that just gets branded around? What does fight IQ mean from
Well,
our perspective? Adaptability and
that's
skill.
a great question because just put a pin for a half a second. The title fight on that night, people are pointing to Jiri having a very low fight IQ because after he was aware that his opponent had blown out his ACL, right? The guy that won blew out his ACL. He didn't make any changes. He just still swing and bang with this guy and got knocked out when he was pretty much in the driver's seat. He had knocked him down, and the other guy blows out his knee on a non-contact injury, which just that's like the scariest thing in sports to me is that can happen. And he ends up getting knocked out. And so, what does fight IQ mean to you?
I was hoping you were going to go first. I could piggyback on yours. I don't know. I don't know how. I think it's maybe. I think it's adaptability actually, but that doesn't push the ball up the field. That's just another word, right?
Right.
It's curious because when we're coming from this alternative perspective, this now I mean not everything's cognitive, right? That
Right.
I actually don't know. So actually, the question I've never really fucking thought about it.
All right. So I have a I'm going to call it a functional definition, right? Because I think we can say that we can make it a cognitive thing, right? But that doesn't help us necessarily. How do you train that? Um, I think some of it is how a person reacts in the moment, and then post hoc we could say that was a high IQ or a low IQ thing. Like you see it all the time when a guy and a guy is winning on the feet, he knocks the other guy down, the other guy gets up, and he shoots a takedown on the cage, and he gets all tangled up and lets the other guy recover. Right? That is, I call that a low IQ move, but what it is really is just a in the moment it's a bad strategy, it's a bad tactic, right?
Can I stop you there, though? I
Please, let's
think
go.
I see this. I have this conversation a lot, right? The what ifs and what about that, and if I could have just done this. They're all they're all counterfactuals, right? We don't know.
Yeah,
You can
right.
knock someone. We've seen fighters knock someone down, go in for the kill, and get fucking choked. We've seen
Right.
fighters get knock someone down, let them back up, and then they lose. So
Right.
we never really know.
Or gas themselves out going for the kill. I think you see that. I think the two things you see a lot of guys gas themselves out going for the kill and then they lose, or they are in a position to finish the other guy and then they change ranges and let the other guy recover and then lose the fight.
I think we
What would
get
you
caught
call
up in.
that?
I don't know. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Excuse me. I would call that fighting. We can always attach a what if and a story about what might have happened.
Right.
I don't know how helpful that is. You know, I was thinking about this. I'm staring at my screen last night, still trying to come up with this fucking assessment, and I'm still lost. I'm completely lost.
Forrest
Um,
didn't help you at all?
yeah, Forrest helps me. There's lots of people I'm talking to that are helping me and saying, "What about this and what about that?" I don't think it's that meaningful when we're talking about live a live assessment, a live skills
Right.
assessment. I think it's a feel. I think it's a feel that you get over a period of sessions, a period of time. And I think as soon as we start looking for a certain criteria or assessment or whatever, you're already muddying things because if are they aware they're getting assessed? You know, what about the other person? Are they trying to? I don't know. It just doesn't feel organic. I don't have a good answer for it.
Right.
Um, but that's the thing with the. So when we look at maybe affordance-based control, where you know you're in the moment, you're perceiving and acting on certain things. Um, that's where the idea of fight IQ seems a little muddy to me.
Right. So for me, I don't know, I'm going to say, uh, I don't think anything is necessarily valuable as a coach unless it's a functional thing that can be trained or somehow go past cognitive. Like, you can't tell your fighters, hey, you got to have a high fight IQ, right? It has to be something we train for. And some of it, I think, is limited because we can't put them in the moment. You can't put someone in the moment where and I've seen other coaches do this nonsense, but where you knock someone down and you taste blood and you're in the moment and the crowd goes fucking bananas. How are you going to train someone to take a step back, take a deep breath, take a second, assess the situation, and then make a choice? Like, you can't do it, right? So,
You can't recreate because you can't recreate the fight in the gym.
no, I mean, you could try, but you can't. I can't imagine, and we could ask fighters, but I can't imagine what it's like to knock someone down in the middle of a big fight in front of 10,000 people who just start screaming and then ask that person to make a different choice or practice a different choice. So some of what we call fight IQ has to be an innate thing related very probably similarly to IQ. There are fighters we say, hey, he's a smart fighter, and there are fighters that tend to make these decisions improperly over and over and over. For me, what I can see functionally, I call pace, place, and space.
That must
And
be true because it rhymes.
yeah, I love, and I can spell all those words too. So what I'm trying to do functionally with them is drill where they play with the ability to control or push pace, right? And we've seen fighters lose fights because they fight at the wrong pace. They get drawn into the wrong pace. And if they can't reestablish their control of the pace, then they have a tendency to gas out or they have a tendency to lose a fight that they didn't want to begin with.
There's a
Place.
so
That's
sorry, just to add to your pace. I remember early on, 15 years ago, I did a first cage grappling match, I think, and I was holding on to this guillotine. I didn't finish it, but I was holding on for dear life, like as squeezing as hard as I could. My arms took about half an hour. They were completely dead. So I call it redlining, right? And I think that's what a lot of the amateurs struggle with. And I don't think you can. Again, I don't think you can meaningfully redline in the gym because
right.
there's this real urgency to fucking fight for your life. And I'm just not sure you can get that in the gym. And I do see I have a young debut. He had a very dominant grappling. It was MMA fight, but he had a debut there and he did great. But we were saying to him in the first, he had it was an arm and guillotine or something or whatever it was, and we were saying that if you don't have it, let it go, relax, because I could see that he was pulling with everything he had, and his arms were going to be shot at the end of it. So how
Right.
is
So
this something
that's
you can is this something you can do you get what I'm saying with this red lining thing?
yeah, of course. I don't think you can do that either. I think that what I do, because it's easy to say, hey, if you don't have the guillotine, let go. But how do they know they really have the guillotine and not in the middle of the fight when all that shit's going on? So what we do is a lot of drills that affords them opportunities to do things with the guillotine, or asks them or forces them or whatever to do things with the guillotine that's not just hold on to it and try and finish.
Yeah.
Now, over the long term, I hope that, and I've seen it with one of my fighters who was apt to hold the guillotine too long, or put himself on his back because of the guillotine. And over time, drilling so that it opened up the options for him when he has a guillotine as a counter wrestling move, as a way to get up. He changed that behavior in his last fight.
Because with the guillotine, if you're on the bottom, once that head pops out,
Yeah, you're
you're
dead. You're due.
yeah,
You lost
yeah.
the fight. And so, like, is that a low IQ move, or is that something that hasn't been trained properly? Which is probably what it is. Like the Von Flu choke should not exist.
Right.
It is purely a person holding onto a guillotine when they are drowning. And if they just let go, it would be better. So in my fight IQ idea, I think that is one of those things. Like, so I got pace, space, and place. Space being, we see this all the time, people fighting in the wrong range, people not controlling distance, people, when you knock someone down, crashing into them on the cage and changing the range when you shouldn't be, when you should just take a step back. And so we have to drill this space control. Can you control the center of the ring? It probably used to be called ring generalship in boxing, right? You would see, when we watch two boxers, we could see who's the real ring general. And then, and again, these are all one type of thing, right? Space, place, and pace, place, and space. We see fighters getting drawn into a fight like Adesanya that they shouldn't have, right? And I don't know how, and we just have to we have to drill and drill and drill until they have more ability to avoid being drawn into things.
It
So
seems like it's a big an emotional component there too, though.
Oh, for sure. For sure. But at a minimum, I think we need to identify, as coaches, if we can identify some of the components that we would consider this low IQ fight, right? Fighting at the wrong speed, fighting in the wrong space in the cage, or fighting in the wrong place, the wrong range. Then at least we can attempt to find ways to drill those things to change behaviors, or make the fight slow down a little bit for them. Now, we can't account for any of the things going on in the cage most of the time, right? You knock someone down, you smell blood, 1,000 people are cheering. I don't see how we can help someone take a step back. But we have seen fighters that react better in those situations and worse in those situations. And some of it's probably emotional, some of it's probably unchangeable. But if it's a novel situation, then I think they have almost no chance of making any other decision than emotional.
And again, just the stories that we tell. We've spoken before about you. Have you read any Gilchrist stuff about the split brain?
I mean, just a little bit, not
Okay.
enough. I'm not too impressed with, I just, when I read left and right and this and that, and this is creative and this is this, and it doesn't resonate with me that way.
Yeah. I'm not, like, from what I've been reading, I don't see the brain being like that either. But the phenomena he was talking about was that when they do all these tests, they'll give some stimulus in the right eye and whatever, either one way or the other, and you start to elaborate. You make up a story. You make up a story about your action.
Right.
And I think this is a lot what goes on in fighting and commentary and navel gazing about fighting. We're watching action unfold. We're watching interactions. We're watching this system behave, and then we just map our nice little stories onto it, which are
Yeah.
probably far from reality.
Right. And they do also, right? They'll, after fights, and I'll be sitting with one of my kids and we'll be talking about the fight. And and what's fun is they have a story about, they can tell you what they think they were thinking, what they think they were feeling during the event. And the further I think you are from the event, the more that story is completely made up, especially if they've watched the fight. And if you watch the fight with them, then they seem to be able to narrate what they were thinking and feeling, but there's no way that that's remotely possible. Because I said to them, like, so wait, you were just constantly thinking about this whole thing like nonstop. And then they know, like, they realize how silly it is to try and do that. And what I want them to do is just look, if they want to look at pieces, look at where we need to improve our training so that they have opportunities to do better in those areas or exchanges or things. But to say that I was waiting for this, or I saw this, or this was going to happen, or I felt this way, I wish we could really know what they were really doing, because I hope during the fight their brain wasn't doing much at all. Like, I hope they weren't overthinking and feeling and emotional during the event.
We're
You know,
coming
they
back.
almost
We're
they
coming back
almost
to the
never,
final floor, right?
yeah, or something, or terror. Maybe I would love one of the guys to say, "Listen, I don't remember any of this round because I was fucking terrified. Like, I got, come tell me, like, hey, he hit me in that first round and I felt his power and I spent the rest of the fight just trying not to get hit." I would believe that story. I
I
would
think
I would definitely believe that story.
I think that was my story. I was fucking shaking every time I got in there, and it took me a few slaps around the ear holes to get
Yeah,
engaged.
some guys are like that. And you know what? You see it in the flow of a fight sometimes, where if one fighter is coming forward and he's throwing and he's pressure and everything's going his way, and then he gets hit, and he gets hit harder than maybe he's been hit before, or harder than he thought he could be hit. And all of a sudden, for the rest of the round or the rest of the fight, he never comes forward anymore. And that can't possibly be like
It's
he
not a fight
like
IQ.
it's not right. It's not fight IQ. It's not. It's something uncontrollable. It's human nature. It's fear, it's fight and flight, and it's intentionality, and all things that we don't control online.
No, and I think again, I think it's not straightforward. You could have the most robust game plan, but maybe that's not helpful if things don't go your way, and things don't go your way in fights all the time. And now you're trying to. We spoke about that. Well, Mali wasn't able to kind of get
Right.
out of that against Marab, so you do see that, and I'm wondering what we're trying to do is we talk about skill being adaptability, and whether there's a downside or a detriment to going in with too much of a plan. I don't know.
Right. Well, we have definitely seen fighters and even teams in sports that play differently when they are ahead or behind. And there are some fighters who can only fight well when they are quote unquote ahead, when everything is working, when they are in control. And when they lose that control, they start to fall behind, they start to fall apart a little bit. And you see that even in team sports. There are teams at the highest levels that, if the score is 0-0 or they are winning by 3 points, then they play differently. And I don't know if that's the coaches, but it looks like on the field there is a change of organization when they are ahead versus when they are playing from behind. They get tighter.
I guess that's the question we're asking. Is that an emergent quality that just
Oh, for sure.
happens, or is it somewhere in between?
Well,
In
did you watch the Masters this weekend?
the golf.
Yeah.
No,
You
I
love
tell
golf.
you, I love golf. It's like grappling. I love grappling. I don't want to watch
Yeah.
it.
Me either. I don't want to either. But I didn't pay attention because after the second round, I think, or the second, I don't know what even the terminology is. My father-in-law loved golf, so I ended up watching a little bit. After the second round, Rory McIlroy was in charge. He had the biggest lead. You figured he could just sleepwalk into it, but he gave it all back in the third round, to the point that it looked like he was going to have a monumental all-time collapse. And as a coach, you watch, and a lot of times when you see that, it just gets worse and worse. It just builds its own momentum, right? Momentum's an interesting thing, right? In sports, they talk about momentum all the time. This team has momentum going into the locker room. This team has lost momentum. I don't know what that is. It is an emergent thing. Um, but the way he handled that adversity to come back and still win again was very impressive to me. And I assume that's part, his makeup, his fortitude, all the things that go into the system. Um, but that's why I don't watch usually. But I was watching to see if this was going to be an all time collapse, or could he hold it together. That's what I was really impressed by. When a fighter gets knocked down, can they get up? They give up, which is like some of human nature. Can they fight their way back into it?
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting.
So if it is emergent, which I think we both completely agree that these things are emergent, these systems are self organizing. What do we do as coaches to help the system organize in a way that would be beneficial for our fighter?
I think it all comes back to me. I mean, I'm I keep coming back to this idea of just the experience, and I don't just mean that as a generic word. I mean it very, very specifically. You're experiencing that context. You're experiencing the dynamics, everything that goes into that representative context and experience. We need to get that as much as possible. That's why at the moment, I'm taking it's all amateurs I have, and I'm looking at they're probably not going to have the patience for this, and it's probably going to be hard to match them. But I'm looking for 10 to 15 amateur matches,
Right.
slowly progressing. I don't cherry pick. I'm not putting them up against cans, but I'm careful. I want fair. I
Right.
tell the promoters all the time, I don't want to mismatch either way. I want a fair fight, and but I'm careful with that because it's at this stage it's about the experience for me. And
Right.
we speak about a lot. I can handle a loss. I hate losing. I hate it for them. I hurt for them. But if they're not getting hurt, that's
Right.
much, much more manageable. I can live with that. And then at least they've got the experience. That kid Lucas, he hasn't debuted yet because it just so happens his fight was axed right at the end. One was axed a couple hours before he got in the cage, but I was happy because he got the experience of the lead up and the
Right.
weight cut and the nerves and the walk into the stadium and stuff. That all counts.
Right.
I want to get as
I
much of
have
that as I can.
it's one of those just many small reasons that I have them bring their training partners that, a lot of times guys who haven't fought before have them bring their training partners. And I like to not be in the corner. I like one of those guys to be in the corner so they can experience as much of it as they can experience. Even just a little bit, just every little bit is additive to me.
Yeah.
So then if you're a gambler, then part of what you bet on with Rory McIlroy is that he'd been there before. Right? He is the defending champion. There's a value in the fact that he has competed and won that before.
And the stakes are different.
And the stakes are different, but the point being, he has done it before. So I guess if you're looking at that point where it's like, is he going to fall apart or not? Some of your calculus for that is he has been there and done it before. And that is probably the best indicator of being able to do it again.
Right.
Which is why defending a belt is different than winning a belt. The stakes are different. It's easy to be the challenger. It's harder to be the champion.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So
The stake, the
the
stake,
fight
the stake,
IQ,
the stakes thing is interesting. I think I've used it
right?
a long time ago when we were talking about because I used to use the poker analogy. Were you ever a poker player?
No gambling for me.
Oh, really? Yeah, I was a poker fiend as well. But that was like with sparring, right? Like with poker, if the stakes are too low, you play like an asshole. If the stakes are too high, you play like an asshole. You need
Okay.
the stakes, the bets, the wagers that have to be just on that edge of comfort and discomfort. And I think there's something there that maps onto how we train,
Sure.
how we fight,
But
who
I
we
also
match up
assume
against.
that some people the stakes become easily overwhelming, and for some people, nothing is ever too big for them. And you hear this all the time. The NFL draft is next week in Pittsburgh. I'm going, um, and so I follow just the process because I'm really interested in the process of talent evaluation and what they're looking for. And I find it very humorous how how much of talent evaluation is based on things that are completely out of context. Now, some of that they have really good metrics for. So body type, body shape, all the athletic attributes, they have really good metrics for. So, but um, some of the players they talk about that the moment is never too big for them. And some players they talk about when they go against better competition, they seem to not perform as well. And I assume that much of that is just, it's not blank slate. I mean, that's what they bring to the table to begin with. Some guys, we both have guys who they just seem to love to fight, right? I mean, they train hard, but they love to fight. And so their mentality is different. Their ability to perform under the lights is different than a guy who either is less experienced or doesn't have that makeup.
Yeah, I think you're right. And we've been talking about this training environment and whatnot, especially from our perspective. It's somewhat of a filter, right? There's a evolutionary and selection process in training, in development, and
Right.
you just mentioned it. I got a team of fighters. They're all very, very different, and eventually the sport through injury or whatever or circumstance is going to filter a lot of them out. Some of them are just age out of it or whatever, or going other things, which is great. But who's left standing at the end is very much depending on who walked in the fucking door in the first place.
100%. 100%. Whoever walks in the door, whoever survives, whatever that selection process is, and that selection process is not just in your room. It is all the roadblocks the world puts up. It's all the choices. You know, I often tell a story about one of the most talented young fighters I ever had. He met a girl and she came to one of his fights. And then after the fight, she said, if you continue to fight, we can't date anymore. And that was the end of his amateur and pro career because he chose her. And in the long run, it was the right move because he married her and became a medical doctor.
Right. That's
Right. But that had nothing to do with, you know, that's part of the selection process of life. I mean, there are, you know, these NFL guys are they are making choices that will affect their job security and millions and billions of dollars on 21-year-olds and 22-year-olds who have never had that much money put in their hand, have never had that much freedom, have never had that many people in their ear before. Some of them are going to be able to ignore that, and some of them are going to fall apart within a couple of years, sadly. And
it's
so you
fucking
mentioned,
wild to me. I was reading about
good.
it might be bullshit. I was reading about Mayweather yesterday. It's fucking just mind blowing to me how these athletes can. I'm not suggesting he's broke or he'll ever be broke. That's the article I was reading.
Oh, that he was a billionaire and now he's broke, and then he was a billionaire and
Yeah.
he's broke. Yeah. Have you ever like, so I've never spent time around him, but I've seen I had some people that were part of that boxing show he put on in Atlanta. I don't know if you know this. He did like his own version of um TUF, really, where he had rappers and boxing teams, and he lives his entire life with cash, right? So there's no like money saved, there's no money invested. It's just like cash. And the brilliant thing, I don't know if you know why he made all that money, but the brilliant thing is he gambled all of his money on himself. So he promoted himself. So he put up all the money for his fights. If the fights were failures, he would have just been done. But when they're successes, he makes all that money. But then it's not like that money goes to an investment guy. It just gets spent. He's got a huge entourage. He's got all these hangers on and stuff. He could possibly be broke one day. Tyson was, right?
I believe Tyson was. Holyfield was. So, like,
Right.
his
And
his
the worst
girl.
thing you can do is marry a bunch of women and then you have to give them half every time. I don't know anything about that, but you might, but I don't know anything about
Happily, yeah, I'd happily give up $500 million
that.
if I could keep the other half. So
Yeah,
the
that was a wild story. Wait, you said evolution, so it's a good segue for me. Did you see
yeah,
this paper in Nature yesterday?
no,
So, long story short, and I think you should look it up. I think because what it showed was evolution basically of different populations has not slowed down, it has not stopped, and it has sped up. And so when they are comparing populations, I think they use West Eurasians. I'm not sure how they parse out what that group is. And compared them to other groups, they are evolving as fast as ever. And much of that evolution is on the brain.
hmm.
And so there are these differences. Some of it was body fat, some of it was skin color, but the ones in the brain are fascinating to me because I think people have a tendency to separate the brain and the body and think the brain is much more programmable without realizing how much genetics plays a role in the difference between me and you, let's say. And so this paper, you know, there's been a lot of work. The guy that did this paper wrote a really good book, and he's taken a lot of shit for some of his viewpoints. He's a Harvard guy. He's one of the best, you know, when it comes to this area. Some of these differences between populations over the last 10,000 years have been really large, and the signals all point towards evolution. And so you start to realize how many of our mental abilities or processes or whatnot are just as strongly shaped by evolution as everything else.
Right. But what we were talking about the other day, I think, I mean, maybe you don't, maybe you can characterize it as an evolutionary pressure, but I think this is going on at a micro scale too, with our skill sets and our movements and engagement with the world, right? And I think
Yes.
that might be one of the underlying mechanisms is that, you know, when we're sparring, you know, I'm reluctant to mention people's names of coaches on here without, you know,
Yeah, don't do it.
no, no, but I made a
Unless you want
comment.
to.
No, no, I made a comment on because we share a lot of stuff. We talk a lot of shit.
I do.
It's
Yeah,
just
for
not
sure.
just not
We
publicly.
should.
It was a guy had a reasonable following. He made some real, and I try to avoid, you know, get my fingers going. But he said so. It was something along the lines that you can't learn boxing through sparring, and I made a comment that said that is where you learn. Because in the same video, he was saying you get hit in the, if you get you can't do that. You have to learn the fundamentals because if you go just spar, you get hit in the face, you're going to bring your hands up. If you get hit in the ribs, you're going to bring your elbows in. I think you're making my fucking point for me.
Right,
And
exactly. Sounds like it.
I think there's this selection pressure that we're using as we interact, and we are, as Bruce Lee says, keep what's useful, discard what is not, and this is what's going on.
So
Like that's more a 30,000 foot view of the dynamics and the tractors and blah 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 blah.
right, and so you and I have had this discussion. I think I sent you a message the other night. I had this sort of epiphany that we agree that the fundamentals, what people call the fundamentals, are the rules of the sport. And I think by rules, we are saying that the entire system that the sport is governed by, right? Where how big the cage is, and that it is a cage, and that the surface is matted. And any changes in those things will have an immediate and drastic effect on the athletes. And so, like, if you took a football field and you spread it 20 yards and you made it 20 yards longer, I would argue that within 1 or 2 seasons, the players would be 20 or 30 pounds lighter because the ability to move laterally will become more important, and people who are lighter move laterally better. That's just an example. And that's evolution of the sport, right? That is one system that evolves. The athletes evolve. And I know we're using the word evolve in a lot of different ways, but systems evolve over time. And so the shape of the athletes will evolve or change, governed by the sport. And so, like in Georgia, they fight in 2 size cages. At one location, they have this very small cage to fit in that location. And at the other locations, they have a larger cage. And so as a coach or a matchmaker, we have to take into account that some of our fighters will do way better in a big cage than a small cage.
Yeah, we're the same. We have a show around here, a couple of regional shows here, state shows. One is in an 18-foot cage. That's a small fucking cage.
That is small. Yeah, I think that's 20 is the small one for us.
Okay, so 18 is like you're 2 or 3 steps back, you're on the cage, right? So that plays into my matchmaking.
Right.
If I've got a few options and I know one's a 26-foot cage and one's an 18-foot cage, I'm going to probably prioritize putting my grapplers in the smaller one.
Yes, for sure. We just had one of our tall. We have a 6'3", 170-pound fighter who's a very good striker, very good mover. He wanted this fight, so we took it against a college level wrestler, and it was in the small cage. And we did it on purpose because it was one of the novice amateur fights, and who gives a shit? Fight as many guys that are fight as the hardest guys you can, especially in Georgia. The first novice fights, there's no striking the head on the ground. And when there was the other guy just was able to close the space because there was nowhere to move, and it ended up being a grappling match. That fight in a bigger cage, maybe it goes the same, but it's easier to move in a bigger cage. And so if you're fighting a better striker, you want the smaller cage. If you're the better striker, you want the bigger cage.
Yeah.
Now, if everybody fought in the same size cage and all of a sudden everyone was fighting in a 30-foot cage, but now the sport says everyone's going to fight in a 20-foot cage, the sport evolves and the fighters have to evolve with it. And so I love that about sports. Like, I've told you before, evolution is at the biological level, evolution is one of my favorite topics. Yeah, I really, because it's fascinating to me. When I started reading about it when I was in high school and college, it's just fascinating me. And I know a lot of people get weirded out by time scales and things, so it seems like it's not possible, but I really love the idea of this microevolution of you just change one rule. You change one piece of equipment. You change one incentive structure. And then you watch the rippling evolutionary effects on the entire system. Right. And it tells you that a systems approach, a systems view is the right one.
And you don't mean system as in I have this fighting system.
No, I mean dynamical
complexity.
Yeah. And I'm reading,
and that's very much very much depending on your perspective or what you think like the underlying ontology is. One of my last papers for my bachelor's was investigating the home side advantage. But
okay, interesting.
But it's coming from a very kind of cognitive thing. So was it
right?
Was it the travel? Was there a bias? Was it the fan crowd or whatever? So I was trying to get all these things. And now that I look back at it, I think it's familiarity, right? I think it's familiarity.
Well, I guess if you listed those things, is it this? Is it this? Is it this? Is it this? My answer would be yes, it is.
or maybe
Every variable that changes from being the home team to the away team is a factor, some more than others. Right? You ever
because the
did
fundamentals of it, like the basketball, football, whatever, the fundamentals of the game, the rules of the game are exactly the same.
you ever see the movie Hoosiers?
No,
It's a famous sports movie, but just to your point, he takes the team to the arena for the big championship game, and he gets a ladder and a tape measure, and he climbs up the ladder and he takes the tape measure and he measures the basket height, and he has his assistant coach say, what is the height? 10 feet, and his point is that that's the same height basket at their gym, at every gym, all the time, so that showing them like it's the same thing, right? Don't put too much effort or nervousness about being somewhere else. The sport is the sport, and it's played the same way between those lines. Now, that's easy to be reductivist, but it does make your points a little bit. The sport is the sport.
the sport's the sport, and it's all the other tiny little things. I know I'm going wildly off track here. Have you
No, there is no track.
Have you read anything about that kind of postural stuff, the way people posture themselves?
Yeah, I don't.
And you're not buying it. The reason I asked that is when I was studying about the home side advantage and whatnot. I forget which club it was, but it was a English Premiership club, and apparently they designed the visiting side's locker room so there was loads of crouching down, and there were almost the affordances that were putting in that locker room was causing the players to, it was where their keep their gear and everything, just to be in this kind of almost bent over. I mean, now you're really clutching at straws here, but to the point, that was whether the science is robust, whether that's what's really going on. This was a team that was trying to get every single advantage by putting the visitors in this kind of, I don't know, emotional, hormonal state of being kind of fearful or submissive.
So I don't put too much into that stuff. However, making the visiting locker room much less comfortable than is something across all sports, right? The home locker room is plush and beautiful, and I think the Boston Celtics at their original facility, like the visitors locker room didn't even have hot water. Like it was made to be uncomfortable. I don't know if they were dealing with the psychology of being uncomfortable, but it was wooden benches and there wasn't enough room and there wasn't a whiteboard, like everything they could do within the legal rules to make the away team, the team visiting feel shitty. They did that. So I don't know if it's postural or whatnot, but what you're describing, I think, is something that goes on in all sports now. Even if you go I've been in the visitors locker room when we fought in professional stadiums. We once fought where the Avalanche and the Nuggets play in Denver, and they toured us, and we saw the two locker rooms, and the home team's locker rooms were like home away from home. Everything was like 4 or 7 foot guys, and it was plush, and there was hot tubs, and the visitors locker room was sparse. They were going to take every advantage they had from being home versus away. And do you ever read about the English Olympic cycling team? I can't remember the term they used. Marginal gains. And so English cycling wasn't winning the medals that they wanted to. So they brought in some people to find as many marginal gains as they could, as many small gains as they could. And so one of the things that they did was the team traveled with their own beds. So that, I don't sleep in hotel rooms. Can you sleep in a hotel room?
I could sleep on a washing line.
Okay, I can't. I got to take a bunch of Xanax and I sleep like shit. It's terrible. But imagine that hotel room had your bed in it. And so, yeah, there's I think we can get into this stuff, but it's all very similar.
Probably a billion of these little things.
Yes. And so, but think about like when they go to the Olympic Village, there was an issue years ago where like people were eating one thing in the Olympic Training Center in Colorado, and then you fly to Sochi or somewhere, and the cafeteria is all local foods and stuff. You're going to have a couple of days of discomfort. You're going to have a couple. So like Forrest was saying, they fly chefs around now. So now you don't have to worry about how am I going to eat the next 3 days in Vegas. I think all these things that are really part of this really big system. Forrest was talking about, because you were talking about home and away, which I had not ever thought about, training with different opponents to get variability. we both agree is very important. But I hadn't thought that that there's a big difference between you going to their gym versus them coming to your gym.
Yeah, I think we see that as, you watch Strickland or Adesanya and guys like that. They're always in different gyms, sparring with different dudes, and I think that's extremely powerful. And to an extent, when we run these pancreation events, 18th will be our next one. I'm really trying to encourage coaches and gyms around the area. Like, I don't want to own this. I'm no gatekeeper of what we're doing. I want opportunities for my guys all the time. But there's been a couple of opportunities where we have gone out to, and the team just haven't quite performed as well. Same rules. Everything's the same apart from this. Obviously, they're in different location. So
Right.
come back to this kind of familiarity again. And I wonder, when things are unfamiliar, it's just maybe tugging away at your attention or perturbing you somewhat. That's from that's from our perspective. But when
Right.
that paper I wrote, it was about jet lag and travel and blah blah blah, all this stuff. Which again, it's probably all part of it.
Yeah, there's a statistic in the NFL about teams going from the West Coast to the East Coast versus the East Coast to the West Coast, and teams have had to adapt to that, or playing early games versus later games, and all those things. It shows how dynamic everything is, and the we as coaches, there's a limit to how many of those things we can even do anything about. Experience mitigates some of it. In the NFL, when they see these things, they have to be very careful to adjust for them, or fucks up their gambling. Back to gambling, and so I don't want the first time my pro gets in a car and drives 8 hours while cutting weight in a car and fight the next day in a foreign place. I don't want the first time to be as a professional. Now, maybe some of them it wouldn't make any difference because they're wired that way. And we try and make those road trips fun to reduce the pressure and things like that. But those are all variables we never introduced, we can't introduce. And I don't want that novelty necessarily to be at the professional level.
I know, the more we scratch down, it just seems like a big fucking black box of mystery.
And we realize how little of it we actually control.
Well, I
You
think
know,
that's what when we talk, when we have the narratives and the game plans and the blah blah blah, and we're sitting here fucking rabbiting on every week. There's almost like an illusion. We're, even we have it, right. This is why we're talking about it. This is an
we do.
illusion of control.
Well, it's like the illusion of free will. I think without that, for some people, it'd be really hard to get up and start their day every day. And so, as coaches, without some illusion of free will, and I think maybe some of it, our fighters gain confidence from it. I think maybe that's a one of our big jobs as coaches is to make sure that they enter the cage as confidently as they can. Um, I think that is helpful, and so the more experience we have as coaches, the more we can help them navigate some of that. Come back to that experience piece.
Was it you that was telling me that fucking lobster story about if the lobster loses a fight, it it
Oh,
changes its baseline of either serotonin or dopamine, but makes them more risk averse for the rest of their lives.
it makes sense. Didn't Kahneman and them do a lot of looking at risk and reward, and human beings are more risk averse than they are reward centric. Like even if the proposition is put in a way that highlights the risk versus highlighting the reward, it's the same exact proposition. People will choose the risk averse version versus the reward based version. And so, yeah, I mean, we see a lot of young fighters, and we see even professional fighters fight not to lose. Right? That happened at the UFC this weekend. Um, Johnny Walker fought somebody else. I don't love Johnny Walker, which is why I remember. And so these two guys are fighting for numbers and rankings and prestige. Neither one of them fought. They were both so afraid to lose. They were so risk averse.
I think this is why I keep coming back to this idea of trying to maximize the the frequency of that experience and
Right.
really take a long-term development plan. Because we thought, I think there's a defensive mechanism, right? We're like, well, amateur results don't really mean anything, and I think deep down I do believe that, but they're also meaningful to me too because there's a lot built into it, right? If a team goes on a string of losses, do they start losing faith in the training? The questions, the creeps, the doubts all start coming in. So that's where I see myself now is from the not so much the development side, just from my regular students, but for the fight team themselves. Most of my attention goes towards when we're fighting, who we're fighting, and is this something that that's fair and the right time? And I don't know it's the right time, but that's what I think about. Like I'm
Yeah,
careful.
yeah,
I'm careful with matchmaking for the bigger picture because it's part
right,
of a longer term thing.
right. And it does have an effect. It's hard when you have multiple guys on the same fight card, and one of the guys that everyone loves and love, one of everyone's favorite training partners goes out and loses early in that card. And I'm always preaching, that this is a team sport, but the competition is a solo thing.
Yeah,
And so one of your teammates going out and losing a fight has no bearing on you and your fight. That's just an independent event.
it shouldn't.
It shouldn't, but it's hard to do that. The good thing is most of the time when that guy loses, he comes back and he's still upbeat and he's still, if a guy loses and I could see it that he's took that loss really tough, I might even pull him away from everyone else until the night's over.
Yeah,
Go put on your shirt and go sit in the crowd with your friends and stuff. Don't come back to the locker room. But they take the loss well and they're like, hey, I had a great time. That was fun. Let's go kick ass and come back to, keep the guys going.
yeah, it's interesting. My team are very, very, very different on how they handle losses. Some want to just bury themselves in a hole for months. Others are back in the gym on Monday getting after it. It's wholly unique.
Right. So
Fortunately, I haven't happened too much.
if we started that, it all points to how many things we actually can control. Forrest mentioned sports psychology. I have two thoughts on it. One is it is an area of the sport that I don't know that much about, but I also have a very negative feeling about sports psychology. Um, and maybe that's my normal bias against soft sciences and things like that. But I've never seen a person change their makeup, right? And I've seen people find ways to work around mental deficits, if you will, you know. But I don't know if that comes from sitting on the couch with a sports psychologist or practice, training, experience. But the highest levels of all the sports employ sports psychologists and use them and trust them. And so maybe my bias is just what I think sports psychology is versus I'm sure there's an ecological approach to sports psychology. I'm sure that's what John Baker's doing. I'm sure that's what other people are doing. I just don't have enough experience with it. Like motivational interviewing and things like that. I just don't have enough experience with that stuff.
Yeah, I think it's the same, right? From our perspective, it's just how you behave, how you relate, how you engage with the world. And if you're able to experience that over time and build some kind of positive affect around it, then that's what we're looking for, right? And conversely, that's why losses could be so kind of devastating because they change or they reconfigure the relationship that you have with that experience.
Right. Yeah. I've had fighters. I'm sure we've all had fighters who you watch them fight and you're like, the only thing missing is they don't know how to win. Like maybe it's because they've never played another sport, or maybe because this is so different than anything they've done before that they haven't figured out how to win yet. And maybe some guys never do. You know, um, what was I what was I reading the other day? A high level professional who had lost his first two professional fights, and that could you lose your first couple professional fights. I could see that being so damaging for some people that they either never fight again or they never make it to the level because it changes that relationship. It changes how they look at everything. But there are also guys in sports, there are positions in sports where they say you have to have a short memory, right? Like the guys that cover wide receivers in the NFL, the cornerbacks. Like if they give up a big play, they still got to go back against that same guy the next repetition. And if the previous repetition is coloring your thought process, if you're in your head, it could all go very badly very quickly.
Yeah,
And I'm sure
it goes both ways, right?
well, it builds confidence in one guy, right? And so when you look at like they say a guy it gets hot, right? I don't know. Is that just eventually they're going to regress to the mean, or is that a confidence issue? And why can't they carry that forever?
I do have to be mindful of that. I talk especially the grapplers and stuff. I want them grappling early. Like I want that you've been training with for a month and a half. Go and do a tournament. You'll probably get whooped, but you're at least experiencing that. But
Right.
now you got me thinking that's a double-edged sword. I could like it's similar because we have a live environment all the time, very mixed classes. I have to I have to remind people as well, is a rite of passage here. You're going to suck for a while. And then when newer people come in, you're going to have this perceived sense of competency because you're going to be way ahead of them. But it takes
Right.
time. But it didn't occur to me that's colored by my own engagement with the sport and who I am. And that might be too much for people. But then we're talking about that's the filter, right? Not
Right.
everyone who walks in your gym is going to be capable of this.
I think we have to match that with what they're looking to get out of it. So if I have a guy who is looking to just get, and this is, I taught 2 coaching courses this weekend. And on Saturday, I taught my people that are interested in getting into coaching in the gym or outside. And then on Sunday, I did my current coaches. And one of the things and my current coaches all have a lot of experience with this approach. One of the things that came up is that some people are not in the room to get better at grappling. Like they didn't even join the gym to do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. They joined the gym for whatever other reasons they had. Make friends, confidence, self-defense, fitness, whatever it is. Those students are different in some sense than a student who joined to compete or get good at Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And so as coaches, we have to shape their environment for what they want. And so if you have 2 students who are just there for whatever reason, getting better at jiu-jitsu is not that important for them, then I shape their environment differently. And when they come to me and they're like, okay, I'd like to earn a blue belt, then we can change their way that they interact with the environment. But the point was what really came up, and I was so proud of my current coaches, is that they are taking into account everyone's personal journey as they try and shape that person's environment. And so if you have a 20-year-old kid who wants to compete, then when they're white belts, yeah, go compete and train with different people and train in a different manner. And I expect something different. I have different expectations. If you're a 32-year-old lawyer who's just there for whatever reason, then I want you to experience this differently. And if you change your mind about that, or you change your own intentionality, then we can help you do that also. And I have MMA guys the same way. I mean, if you came into my room on a Tuesday night, I think I had 24 guys. Probably, if 10 of them are actively competing, that's probably all of them. And the other 14 are just there because they really enjoy doing this. They really enjoy the camaraderie. They really enjoy the community. They really enjoy going to fights and being a part of the team. Then I help shape that differently than the guys that are fighting. The guys that are fighting, I have different expectations.
And I
The
think I think
guys,
I think the room organizes for that. Like if our because we've
for
got
sure.
so much partner changing and whatnot, people gravitate towards where they're comfortable, generally speaking.
Yes.
But you'll get so this is going. I need to get going here shortly.
Okay.
This idea that we talk about the challenge point, that's getting muddier for me. That's getting muddier for
Same.
me too, because
Same.
I have this kid Ethan who came in, and I can't speak highly enough of his work ethic. But it's not his work ethic. It's his work ethic, but it's his resilience and grit and determination. You could, and we did, because he wanted to be on the fight team and stuff, and he came in. He'd had a bit of Muay Thai experience, no grappling whatsoever. He got fucking mauled and wrestle fucked around the floor for the best part of 6 months. But he would be back the next day and he'd be in it, and he'd be really, you could sense the frustration in him. There was no fucking quitting this kid. I have yet to see, from an MMA grappling perspective, I've yet to see such rapid development in anyone that's come through my door.
Yeah,
And
it's beautiful.
and because his challenge point was fucking right up at the end, he wanted the challenge. He was not dissuaded. If anything, he had a stick up his ass and he was coming back and he was going to fucking fix this. But
Yeah,
you can imagine other athletes that just this is no for me, or I'm not where I
sure.
should be, or this sucks, or my coach is setting me up for failure, or whatever, and they're out the door. It's
Yes,
fickle.
for sure.
All right, my man. Next week we have we're really geeking out. Next week we have Dr. Brandon Thomas, professor of ecological psychology at Whitewater. He has, as far as I know, zero experience or interest in fighting. So we'll just be able to.
Okay. I'm going to ask him to design a practice then. No, I'm kidding. I think it goes super well. It doesn't go super well. I'm going to SBG camp tomorrow with Rory. People from all over the country get together. We train for 3 days. I am teaching a lesson on Saturday afternoon, completely alive, all of it. And so it will be interesting. And then I come back and then I will do that phone call with you while I'm on the road to West Virginia and Pittsburgh.
Okay, and I know you
All right.
talked to him a bit more, but let's maybe try and get. I'm in Mexico the week after.
Okay.
let's try and get Mr. Baker.
Oh yeah, John would love it. I will see John when I'm in Pittsburgh next week, hopefully. Although it's going to be crazy. I'm moving my daughter and the draft, and I'm teaching a seminar. But I hope to see John for some of it, if nothing else, for a meal or a beer.
All right. Well, give him a love and we'll get him on the horn here
We'll do.
soon. Okay.
Talk to you later, brother.
Have a good day. Just
Bye.
bye.